much
entity.
More supportive of the project.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Without a doubt. And the fact that the storage of water would be a DRP for a disaster recovery protocol for Lake Mead is also helpful, because there's a little bit of separate either revenue stream from that or at least even more support for the project there. And so I think we're probably going to not even, unless we end up through the entire 206 process and it works, we're probably not even going to bother applying for a 205 with the Nevada project. We're just going to go straight to a bilateral.
Okay.
And probably execute that before we spend money on the license, any more money on the license.
And so basically, really, in California, you would do the same. Rather than applying for the 205, you expect to kind of negotiate a settlement as well as part of the broader settlement?
I think as long as the terms...
Or TBD.
Yeah, as long as the terms mirror a 205 or to some degree, we have no problem doing that. Like if they want 25% market exposure, no problem. We would literally sell 25% of the project to Shell. Like they've already indicated interest for over 100 megawatts of power. So for them to trade that they would like to buy. So we're not too worried about that process. We just needed to know what path are we following. And if for any reason we do not get a settlement, or we do not get the cost recovery model in a 205, then we would move to our plan B. But I think the probability now at this stage, after the FERC commissioner meetings, including Chatterjee and his staff, I think it's lower that we would move to plan B. I think plan A is still higher.
Okay. Well, very interesting update.
Yep. And then...
and you said, so that's expected end of May. So
yeah,
it should be within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, it should be filed by end of May. It may leak into early June, but best case scenario, it'll be filed by end of May.
All right, so that's your filing, and is that a public filing or
is that public?
A private one?
I believe it's public.
Okay. And then when is their response due? Is there a set period of time that they respond to that? Until whatever the settlement judge is appointed, or an interim response?
What they've indicated is that they're going to try and move relatively fast on driving it forward. I don't know if we're going to make their summer appointments list, so it may drag into Q3, Q4. Our expectation, based off of what they have told us, is that their goal is to have a plan of action for us in place by year end, which in my mind is, okay, that means we're looking at Q1 best case.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think we're 12 months away, as I think I said to you in the last call, for truly having a defined cost recovery model.
Well,
now,
it would be quite revolutionary. So even if it takes a year, that would be, it would still be quite a coup.
I think what's positive here is that FERC is supportive. And that was the key messages that we were trying to understand. They were incredibly supportive of the license. Are they as supportive of the cost recovery to the point that they will tell us what to do? And not only did they tell us what to do, but they actually literally indicated the exact elements that they would like to see in the 206. So,
do you think there is a possibility that one of the other projects, other pumped storage projects,
Eagle Mountain,
will essentially try to compete for the same tariff under the same model, or just given where they are in the licensing and development process, do not see that as much of a threat?
I don't see it as a threat at all. We looked hard at Eagle Mountain. What we love is that NextEra is absolutely driving these bills through the California Senate and Assembly, and they're spending a heck of a lot of money to do so. And so we're very excited about them spending that money and driving that government relations process forward, and not us. but their project is at Joshua Tree, right? It's the Eagle Mountain, and it doesn't have its LGIAs and it doesn't have its water secured. And so we have our LGIAs and we have our water secured, and we have all the terms of service for the acquisition, storage, and conveyance of water. So it's just a completely different level. So, and for us, worst case scenario, if we choose not to pursue the hydro piece for any point whatsoever, or try and separate it from the transmission asset, we have an $800 million transmission asset that we can build, and then a $1.2 billion hydro project that can we get it either sold or contracted? We're very comfortable with that because, of course, as our backup plan, we've had conversations with everybody from Shell down to Los Angeles Department of Water to some of the electricity aggregators, and just trying to see where terms would look like for either the sale or for the contracting and of power. Now, the only difference here is for like a Grafton, if we had to go down that path, we would probably sell that project before we built it and just build the transmission line, because that's a guaranteed rate case that has already been awarded a PDO on its own. And so with the license and that rate case, it's a 13.5% after-tax ROE, because it meets all of the terms of the high end of the point system. And that's a 40-year transmission.
You're really much more comfortable with the guaranteed revenue model.
You know, I'm just not smart enough and knowledgeable enough on the local markets to put in place anything where there is risk warehousing. I just don't know enough about it. And that's not who we are. And if we come to that point, then there's people who are better suited to handle that than we are.
Okay. And just going back to the point on sort of other competition, we had briefly talked about the San Vicente project as well, and, you know, the potential that was sort of motivating San Diego and in some of their comments. You know, how do you see them as a threat to the project?
I think no change. If the forestry department had granted them the transmission right of way, that would have changed. I think my view would have gotten a little bit more hawkish on them in terms of watching exactly what they're doing. Yeah. But because it wasn't, that actually leaves my view unchanged on them from the last we spoke.
Okay. I mean, do you still see the possibility that, you know, if your project sort of starts to really look clearly like a front runner, that San Diego then would just become, I mean, they would no longer need to develop San Vicente, that they could become a champion of the project?
You know, I don't know is probably the answer. I think that California needs so much right now from a storage and an intermittency protection perspective that it needs everything. It needs us. It needs more pumped hydro storage. It needs software working to better load balance. It needs micro batteries. It needs everything. If you're truly shutting down, like I have guys who are, what's interesting to us is we sit on all sides, right? So we see what's happening from the natural gas perspective, and we see what's happening also from the renewables perspective, and of course the oil perspective. But here on power, it's more nat gas based than oil. And we've had guys who are coming to us and basically saying, hey, if we are on our hydrocarbon business, on our fossil fuels business, on the oil and gas side of our house, are we willing, with the assets that we have, because we just took one of our companies public, are we willing to contract long term for power to the California area for gas? And so we're taking a hard look at that and going, how can you guarantee a forward rate on gas in California? And that's just impossible. So who are you? What's your credit quality, right? And what's really interesting is, and we just have very preliminary views on this. So think about this as like a P10 confidence level, because this is very preliminary views. We've not done enough work on it. So please don't add any confidence to what I'm saying right now.
Yeah. At
all. This is now just anecdotal. But what we're seeing is they're starting to develop a view with gas marketers in that area that the price of nat gas in California is going to skyrocket, and so anybody who has the ability to ship it in there and who can lock up supply cheap before that price goes up will make a nice spread in the middle. I don't know if that's real or not, but it's an interesting view, that is for sure. And they're smart people who are looking at this. These are not little companies.